Meeting will come to order. Please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. The one change, one addition to the agenda is the fee schedule, which will be covered immediately after the budget. And proxies, I have David Welchell's proxy. We have 3 members attending from Zoom, Mike, Tia, and Mary. How could I forget Mary? She's going to be mad at me. Okay. First off, we have celebrating success.
In the water department in September and October, we had Is it on?
There you go.
Okay. In the water department in September and October, we've been very busy all year with the new home constructions. And we got in a position where we had several equipment operators and crew leaders out for various reasons, from vacations to bereavement leave to quarantines due to COVID. And it really put us very short-staffed in our maintenance construction fields. So we have a water worker one named Kelby Martin that he's been with us for about 6 years, and he's aspired to become an equipment operator. Can you hear me? Is that any better?
Yeah.
So we had a equipment water worker one named Kelby Martin that has aspired to be a equipment operator and a crew leader for us, and we decided to challenge him to have him do new service installations for us. So this means that he would lead a crew, he would operate the equipment, and he would make the decisions out in the field. And I'm glad to report that he did a fantastic job at this while we were very short-staffed on our equipment operators. And, it definitely showed us, how much he means to us. And, he's been with us for over 6 years. He's one of our most dedicated workers, and he really stepped up for us and helped us. So we're very appreciative of Kelby, and I wanted to recognize him for celebrating success for this. So. And Kelby was not able to be with us tonight. He actually had to quarantine due to a possible COVID exposure, so unfortunately couldn't be here, but I know he's watching at home. So.
Good evening. My name is Joan Glebzinski, and I'm the Director of Recreation. And here with me is Johnny Schrader, who is our Rec Maintenance Support Supervisor. And unfortunately, one of his staff members, Jay Rouse, was unable to be here tonight. But they have both been nominated for a Celebrating Success Award because of their hard work on our first time ever event, the Not So Haunted Woods Drive-Thru. Johnny and Jay worked really hard getting ready for the event. They took some of the ideas that the other recreation staff members presented and brought them to life. Johnny in particular was extra creative and upcycled a number of old things from even his personal workshop to make things for the pet cemetery. And no matter what we threw out to them, they were like, no big deal. Some of us really rely on Johnny and Jay on a regular basis, but that event was especially fun because they got great joy out of it, and we made a lot of people happy. And it was because of their dedication to the success of the event that overall it was a really happy event. And so I appreciate you, Johnny, and Jay, in his absence. Maybe he's watching. So we have some awards for you. There you go. And there you go.
Thank you all for you guys volunteering your time to be on the board.
Thank you. There's one more? No, that's it. That was it, okay. Did you want to cover the Calico cut-ups? The letter from Calico cut-ups?
Yeah, why don't you do that now?
Okay, we got a nice letter from the Calico Cut-Ups Quilt Guild thanking us for a $500 grant to them. They make quilts, they send them out to places where they need quilts. And so we got a nice letter thanking us for a grant that we gave them. Next up is going to be approval of minutes, previous meeting. First one is October 22nd, the regular meeting. Are there any questions about the minutes as presented? Somebody be so bold as to make a motion to approve? Jerry Barron motions,
Second.
Sandy seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kia? Okay, unanimous. Next up is November 12th, the board work session in which there was the presentation of the budget. Can I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Mary?
Second.
Jan? Now, is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, again, signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Tia?
Tia?
Aye.
Mike? Unanimous. Moving on, the Joint Advisory Committee reports are next. Do you know who's here to present?
We don't have one for Lakes because they did not meet.
That is correct.
Chris is in attendance, and he's going to come up and do the recreation report. Chris, if you can come on up, and then I have the summary for the Golf Committee report, and I'll give that.
Okay.
I heard somebody calling for Chris. Good evening, folks. I'm from the Joint Advisory Committee Recreation, and I've got some highlights from our meeting that we had recently. It was on the 9th of November, and we covered all amenities. I'm not going to talk about them ad nauseum, but I'll just hit the highlights here. So essentially, everything is in good maintenance, and great appearance was observed at all amenities across the board. And specifically at some of them, we have Branchwood, where the trail is looking good, and the users are saying that they really love them at this time of the year. Over there, November 4th marked the first day of court closings for the rebuilding and refurbishment of the pickleball courts, and that's expected to be done in the springtime. And also some exercise equipment was moved there for to put back into use. Over at Tyree Park, there was one maintenance issue noted, and that's just that the porta potty there is in really poor condition, and it really should be exchanged. Over at Lake Ann, heavy bicycle traffic is being seen on the weekends, and members, on a side note, are saying they're not catching many fish there, but they're glad to hear that that lake is being restocked soon. Over at Rorden, Holland Complex with the tennis courts, some minor playground maintenance items were noted recently, and they're still outstanding, so that work still needs to be done. And on the tennis side, it's probably a product of the season, but the tennis players were a little upset that it's hard to keep the courts clear of the leaves. And their wish is that the maintenance that is done to remove the leaves is done a little bit more frequently to keep it clearer. Moving over to Loch Lomond, some dead tree limbs were noticed bordering the trail, and they were identified for removal. Some other small maintenance and cleaning items were reported for the staff's attention. And the details of all this, of course, are in the written meeting minutes from us. There was good member interactions at that amenity over the last month. During a 1-hour visit, the committee person reported 20 people walking and walking with their dogs. And she collected some feedback from those folks, some of the folks. They requested that a picnic bench be placed outside the dog park area near the water so that they could enjoy it without having to go into the dog park. And another suggested that the path to the water be cleared a little bit better so access to the water is a little bit easier. Moving on over to the Medfield complex, another big one. And it's shown in great condition and high usage. We visited on a Saturday afternoon, and the representative counted 65 people there. There were 17 in the bike ramp area, adults and children. There were kids and people in the playground, and a large family using the pavilion. Also, of course, some folks were at the tennis courts, or the pickleball courts, I should say. When asked about suggestions by this person, a couple families mentioned that the bathrooms being locked early is an inconvenience. But we know that restroom facility there is subject to vandalism, so that's a tough call there. Okay, moving on to the RV park and the Blowing Springs area. Good condition. There's just some visitor feedback that it's kind of hard to make reservations via the call-only system. They think we should go with addition of an online reservation system to make it easier for everybody. On to Tanyard Creek. Tanyard Creek was observed with lots of folks all over the trails and pavilion, and people continue to be ecstatic over that facility and the cleanliness of the park. There's some deep holes on the path behind the bathroom near the golf practice area that need some attention. It looks like it might be a safety hazard. So that's our amenities. A couple items for new business. We talked about tracking usage at the amenities a little bit, statistics a little bit. And we'll continue to report our qualitative findings when we do our visits and count activity and patrons as best we can. The committee also observed that a lot of people are starting to use the completed sections of that new Greenway extension, and we thought it would be good to add that to our list of amenities to monitor when it is completed. So we'll be able to give a couple words on that in the future. We had some staff reports, of course, and Tom Judson just mentioned that activity card sales, boat registrations, and guest passes were all up quite nicely this year over last. We had discussion that lights for the dog parks would be nice, but currently only there is a single pole light under consideration at this time. Moving over to lakes. Rick mentioned, lakes and parks. Rick's got multiple roles here and for our committee reports on the parks. But he mentioned that the engineers were reviewing the swinging bridges at Tanyard Creek, and a list of repairs were generated. And after they're completed in the next month, they'll certify the bridge for safety with existing limits posted on weight and the number of people. Moving over to the gun range, John Urquhart reported that the ranges are still very busy, 55% increase year over year. There's been some work to expand with concrete pads for additional stations, and those are almost done. November gun classes are filled, but December still has some open slots. And finally, we heard from Joan about the Not So Haunted House drive-through with our award winners. But that attracted a lot of folks. We had 475 cars come through, or about 2,000 people, so that was a great success. Also, Joan mentions that the indoor programs at our facilities are maxed out, so lots of folks using those particular amenities. And trail work along the Little Sugar trail system is about 95% complete, so that's that soft trail system. And that's about it for the Recreation Committee report. We're going to get together again on December 7th, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Tom, with golf?
Jason gave me the summary for golf. They had their meeting on November 11th. Rounds are up considerably, up almost 24,000 rounds over prior year. Range buckets are up a whopping 37,000, so we have a lot of people using the range. In January, we're going to address the dress code policy. That's going to be an item of a discussion at that point. We will continue to use tea times going forward through the entire winter due to COVID. Many of the bathrooms are currently being refurbished, repainted. Kingswood is almost done. They're also adding heating and cooling to all the bathrooms so that there will be year-round usage on those. Gift cards are available for purchase for the holidays on our website. The 21 tournament schedule is currently underway and will be announced in January. There's cart path repair going on at the Country Club at number 11 and number 17. And there's also additional repair work at Dogwood on number 7 and number 8. Most people are adhering to and accepting of the quote, hid from the fairways and drive in the rough initiative. This is important to maintain our fairways all winter long with the increase in play. We just want to make sure that people are keeping the golf carts off the fairways as much as possible. We're all in this together. There will be no meeting in the month of December. They will get back in January on January 13th at 8:30 in the boardroom. And then the last item, we had several members come forward and tell us about the Futures Cup. It was Dave Armstrong, Larry Apathy, Charlie Powell, and Andy O'Neill. This group held a 3-day event that was a Ryder Cup style event, and they raised $2,000 for the junior golf program. So congratulations to this group for taking the initiative. They put this on themselves and donated for the betterment of kids in golf. And that was it.
Thank you, Tom. The next item on the agenda is a preliminary review of the financial reports. And I believe Stacy will handle that.
And actually, this is the final. The accounting department really made a huge effort, and so these finals are actually done, and they'll be posted to our website tomorrow. You were on.
So yeah, the financials will be on the website. We don't have everything completed that we normally give you in your packet. I apologize, it was just the timing. We are working to finish that, and we'll have that to you guys later on this month. So, but we will put together everything we normally do. So let's talk about October. October was another great month. I kind of feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. So revenue for October for the POA, we were $209,000 better than budget and $325,000 better than last year, just for the month of October. Year to date, we're still missing revenue by $26,000, but if you remember last month, it was quite bigger than that just because we had such a great October. I'm hoping maybe in November that we will flip that and be positive when we report November numbers, so it just kind of depends on how the month goes. Wins that are better than budget, our boat registration and rentals are still up. We're seeing them slow down a little bit just because of the season, but they're still, I think they're gonna end the year really high. Foreclosed lots are at $134,000, and our green fees and for guests and member are up $186,000. Some of the areas of risk is still the POA against the $26,000 year to date we just talked about. And then overall F&B, they had a great October. They were up over budget by $15,000, but they're still kind of digging out of the COVID hole. So they're $331,000 still year to date missing on the revenue side. From a gross profit perspective, the POA's gross profit year to date versus budget is $97,000. Last month, we were in the hole 85,000, but we've dug ourselves out, and we're now exceeding our budget for the year to date. In October, we were at 182,000 to budget. The POA gross profit year over year, we are down 220,000, and we had the cell tower, and then we had the ArcMo land that also is showing up now, which is kind of skewing those numbers. Wins better than budget for year to date. Golf operations had an outstanding October, and they were better than budget by 185,000 year to date. October is over budget by 82,000. Our cost of goods in that area did not beat budget. They were down by 19,000, and that was primarily driven by a mix of sales and timing. They're trying to get rid of some inventory and stuff in the pro shop, and it was just a mix of what the cost was with those items. And then risk areas is F&B. They're better than budget for $1,000 for October. However, they were worse still by 261. But I do want to point out that their cost of goods was better than budget by 127,000. So if you think of that in relation to revenue, they're really managing their costs well, because they're 331 missing in revenue, but only 261 at gross profit. So they're really doing a good job of kind of digging themselves out. If you look at the chart to the right, you can just kind of see how that depicts the numbers. Our gross profit being the top, the black line, is really quite a bit higher than the budget and prior year. So it's been a great month. Looking at expenses for the POA. So worse than budget, we have legal of 179,000. We're still having expenses for the Trafalgar Fire and the Highland Stump Dump. We have some janitorial expenses that are up due to cleaning, primarily COVID. And tools and equipment are up 26,000. We had some software and some hardware purchases, both COVID related, and then some golf balls that Daryl had purchased. And then better than budget, kind of the same story as last month. Salaries and employee benefits are up 717,000. Supplies are up 64, maintenance and repairs 44, and our utilities are 94. And you can kind of see our big drivers in the chart to the right. So let's talk about some key financial performance for the POA. EBITDA is better than budget again by 984,000 year to date. October was slightly worse than budget, and we talked a little bit last month about some expenses that we're catching up on through now and the end of the year, so that had a big factor in that, and we were just slightly under by 9,000. Food and beverage division had a positive EBITDA, second month in a row, hats off to food and beverage, by $8,000. And our expenses are under budget year to date by 887,000. And I really expect that for the year, both EBITDA and our expenses are going to come in well below budget. And 2019, obviously, it's just a reminder that the fire is in there. In the middle box, you'll see we talk about golf. I thought it was great to call out that between golf maintenance and golf operations, they exceeded their EBITDA budget by over $500,000 this month. So they kind of topped that number. 247,000 was in golf maintenance, and 295 was in golf operations. The revenue variance was better than budget by 189, and their operating expenses was better by 357. So golf is really doing well. The POA salaries and employee benefit analysis, you can see the salaries and wages are better than budget by 491, and better than last year by 98, and then employee benefits are better by 226, and better than last year by 143. So still the same story as we talked about last month. The two charts at the bottom just kind of depict what we just talked about. And you can see the expense chart. You can see where the expenses are kind of ticking up. The expenses were way low the beginning of the year, really holding back because of COVID, wanting to make sure the revenue was going to be there before we spent the expenses. And now we're seeing some of that tick up as we get to the end of the year, getting those expenses in. And then our EBITDA by month, you can see it's kind of coming down a little bit just because of the expenses ticking up. And we're getting into the slower months for the year, so we're not going to have the revenue that we normally have. So let's talk a little bit about water. So water had another great outstanding October, or they're doing great overall for the year. Some of the wins they had was water income is up 876,000. Water sales are up 545,000, and their new connections are up 318,000. Charlie actually shared today that they had over 100 new connections this year compared to last year, so they're really busy. Really no risks to budget on the water side for revenue. From a gross profit perspective, the wins that they have is their water's still running at 72% margin consistently. Year to date, they were running about 69 last year. October gross profit is better than budget by 79,000, And overall, gross profit year-to-date is better than budget by 1.2 million, and they're better than last year by 1.3. So again, just a great year for water. Looking at water's expenses, so worse than budget, supplies, water installations, 128,000, maintenance and repairs is 49,000, and then equipment and tools is 27,000. Better than budget, same story as last month, salaries and employee benefits, fuel and oil is at 14, membership and training 8, and credit card fees are 7. So some of the same trends that we talked about last month. So a couple key financial call-outs. EBITDA is better than budget year-to-date by 1.1 million and better than last year by $1 million. So they're still holding true to that number. This is attributed to the increase in water sales of 876,000 and an increase in margin. Expenses were over budget in October by 78,000 and over year-to-date by 151. And that's mainly attributed to the new water system installations I just spoke of, and then the purchase of some unexpected equipment. The two charts at the bottom are just kind of talking about expenses and EBITDA, like we talked about on the POA side. You can see their expenses are kind of ticking up towards the end of the year here as they're getting some of their projects done and getting some of their expenses that they held off on earlier in the year. And EBITDA is coming down, and when I talked with Charlie a little bit about that, part of that's expense, and part of that's also just water sales. This time of year, we budget them down, and they trend down going into the end of the year. So it looks like it's coming down, but that's actually normal. And the water loan. So we're going to talk about the water loan on the next couple of slides here, and Tom just went right on by it. So okay, so the balance on the water loan is 1.95 million. I just wanted to point out, we'll talk about this in a second again, but we do have interest income on the water side year to date of $40,000 to budget. So we'll talk in more detail about where we're at on that. And this is just another picture overall of EBITDA. You can see water is at 1 million and the POA is at 984,000 for a total of 2 million. If you start at the bottom, water's blowing the number out, and as you move up, you can see the departments are kind of struggling. One thing I wanted to point out, because I don't think we really hit the charts with it, is the recreation. They're at 253, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the RV park. I thought it's a key call out. The RV park is just hopping busy right now. Very manual process, takes a lot of time, but they beat budget this month by $7,000. They booked $47,000, and they're sold out for Thanksgiving. So, recreation, I don't know if they always get called out because they don't have as many dollars as some of the other areas, so I wanted to make sure that we pointed that out. Now let's talk about the water loan. So the water loan started at 3.5 million, and we've brought it down. Right now we're at the 1.95 million that I spoke of a minute ago. We did have to borrow 25,000 in October, which was much less than what was expected. So we had just kind of everything hitting like it should have. We paid property taxes, and we were still able to get by with only borrowing 25,000. So I've lowered the projection from 2.4 million that I gave you last month to 2.2. Pretty conservative. I don't know what November is going to do just with the COVID scare we got going on right now, weather. There's a lot of stuff I can't predict. And so I'm still being conservative that we'll end the year at 2.2. But if we have a great November, then that number could come down even more. And cash. So let's talk a little bit where we're at on cash. So water unrestricted right now is sitting at 4.9 million. 108,000 is still reserved for the required 2020 bond payments that we have yet in November and December. Restricted is 821 that we have sitting in our restricted account for the bond payment that will be made in January. On the POA side, we have about $2,000 unreserved, and then we have 113,000 that's the reserves from the 2020 plan, which was the commitment we made. And the picture on the side just kind of shows the breakout of the bond payment and water in the POA. So I think that's it. Any questions on the financials?
So I want to make a point of, you'll notice that in the month of October, our expenses were high as we were catching up for those deferred projects we didn't do during the year. Our revenue was tremendous in October, so we actually made budget on the POA side, or missed just by a small amount. I don't anticipate that we will that we will make budget in the month of November and December, because we have more projects that we're trying to catch up on. So, and it's a month where you don't bring in as much revenue because it's the winter. So just to anticipate that lead of 900, almost $1 million on the POA side is going to be reduced in the next 2 months. Just want to kind of give everybody an advance warning of that. But we're confident that all of the projects that were slated in the 2020 budget and that we had planned on doing this year, we will be able to complete before the end of the year, or pretty close to that.
Thank you, Tom. Stacy, it's nice to have some good news. You never know when the situation we're in with the COVID and all that right now, what's going to happen tomorrow. The next item is open forum. There is nobody in attendance who has signed up, and we have one letter.
Mike, can you check and see if there's anybody else? Anybody? out
We
there?
have one letter to be read by Tammy. And go ahead, Tammy.
Okay, can you hear, there we go. This letter is from Jack Bartlett. It reads,
Thank you.
POA Board of Directors. Recently, POA Chairman of the Board, Brandenburg, indicated that McKee, with the application of the revised Article 3, would not be allowed to run for a seat on the 21-22 Board of Directors. For McKee to be subject to the 3-year penalty, Article 3 would have to be applied retroactively, which violates the U.S. Constitution and all state constitutions. See ex post facto laws. It is difficult to believe that the majority of the Board of Directors and the legal counsel would be unaware of the ex post facto laws or would intentionally approve of their violation. Finding no discussion regarding retroactive application of Article 3 in meeting minutes or in a meeting video, is not understood how the board could approve of Article 3 being retroactively applied. Will the Board of Directors take the necessary steps to correct this violation of constitutional law and the apparent miscarriage of justice? Permit McKee, if he so desires, to run for the 21-22 Board of Directors. Thank you, Jack Bartlett.
Tom, you have a response?
So with the assistance of Doug McCash, I put together a response to the letter from Mr. Bartlett. So first of all, the U.S. Constitution governs federal laws and actions taken by governmental officials. It does not govern the policies and procedures of a private entity such as the POA. As a result, Mr. Bartlett's concerns that the POA is violating the U.S. Constitution's ex post facto law are unfounded. The POA is not violating the U.S. Constitution. The POA's bylaws, specifically the bylaws that have to do with the qualifications to run for the Board of Directors, applies to all members of the POA without exception, including Mr. McKee. The bylaws, specifically the qualifications to run for the board, are reasonable and appropriate. As a result, I am not aware of any desire on the part of the board to make changes as you are requesting. In conclusion, the qualifications to run for the Board of Directors are both reasonable and lawful.
Thank you. There was no one else who wanted to address, is that correct? Okay. Having no one else for open forum, we will move on to a short budget presentation. Last Thursday, we had a more lengthy, in-depth presentation to the community. Tom is going to hit some of the highlights on this one, and we'll be able to get down to the voting much quicker. Thank you.
So I'm standing far, can you hear me, Chris? So I'm standing far enough away where I feel comfortable that I can take this off and speak freely. As David said, on the 12th, November 12th, we had an hour-plus meeting on this, so if you would like a lot more detail, it's available. Also, all the handouts are available on our website. You can see it right here. Click on Member Resources, click on Financials, and then you can see the budget towards the bottom section. You can get the the budget presentation, the financial presentation, and you can see the video all in one location, and you can actually go back a couple of years if you want to get some additional information. So it's all available. So if I skip over anything, because I'm going to give you a very edited version, so if there's any detail that is missed, please go backwards. First of all, I think we need to emphasize the 2020 plan commitments, the $6. This commitment is for $1,044,000, and that revenue has been moved from select departments, golf, recreation, and lakes, and it's been moved over to assessment. So golf fees went down, recreation, if you have an activity card, you can now get into the gym facilities, the pool, the lake, so forth for free if you have an activity card. So that revenue has been transferred over. So you'll see that when you look at the detail. $2 is for the Trafalgar Fire. That's $348,000. And if you look in our budget, you'll see that we have $360,000 in legal fees that are tagged for the Trafalgar Fire. Operational expenses, 4, which is $696,000 were committed, and our capital budget for 21 for the POA is $898,000. And lastly, the reserve was $1. This is a commitment of $174,000, and the cash flow budget, what you'll see in a couple minutes, shows $174,000. So you can see that the commitments that were made on the 2020 plan are all being abided by. All right, let's talk about the POA first, and here it is. This is just the summary, and you can see that revenue is going to go up. So let's talk about the columns real quick. We have the 2019 actuals. We have the trailing 12s. This is the 12 most recent actual months all in a row. It goes all the way back to 19. Latter months of 19, and then we have the 21 budget. So you'll see that revenue is going to go up. Cost of sales is going to go up by a little bit. Anytime you go up in revenue such as F&B and pro shop merchandise, you're going to have an increase in cost of sales. Labor is going to go way up, and I have a slide next that's going to detail why the labor is going up so much. And expenses are going down, and that's a number of things are going in our advantage on that, why it's going down. What's most important here is you'll see the improvement in EBITDA. We're going from negative $831 to a positive $140,000, which is an improvement of $972,000, which is tremendous. So we talked about the payroll. So minimum wage is increasing to $11 an hour. This is impacting several departments, not all of the departments. Like golf is being impacted, recreation, think of the lifeguards and so forth. We're proposing a 3% wage increase for 2020. There was a 1.6% increase for our hourly workers and a 0% increase for our salary. And then in 2021, we're anticipating that we will be fully staffed the entire year, all 12 months. If you recall, we had the restaurants closed for extended periods. The workout facilities were closed, and all departments in general were reduced staff. Thinking of golf maintenance, they hardly had any seasonal staff. And unfortunately, you could see it in the quality of the golf course went down this year, and we need to get back to where we had previously staffed. All right, here's all the capital projects, and if you go online and look at the financial reports, you'll see that right now on page 36, if you go through the detailed report, we actually walked through each and every page. But here's all the projects, and you'll see on the bottom, it amounts to just shy of $900,000, and you can actually get information on the website regarding all these individual projects. There's quite a number of them. With regards to the water loan and reserves, consistent with the 2020 budget, we've put aside $280,000 to repay the water loan. As Stacy indicated earlier, for this year, we're going to beat that mark for 2020 by over $1 million if everything goes as anticipated. And the reserves, we're going to add an additional $174,000. We're going to skip that slide. And so you'll see here is here's the EBITDA. We talked about that earlier, how it's an improvement, and here's the allocation. These are allocated expense. These are reimbursements from the water side, because the water department does not have their own accounting department. They don't have their own HR and legal and so forth. And so we calculate that out, and that's how much it comes out to. You subtract out the projects, you subtract out the payments for the water loan, subtract out the reserves, and you get a positive cash flow of $95,000. This is a little bit thin, but better than last year. I think last year we had a razor thin $7,000 positive, something to that nature. Deferred maintenance, the one comment that I'd like to make is a best practice of our industry is to spend to depreciation. Our depreciation annually is $1.8 million. Our capital expenditures is about $900,000, so we're spending about 50%. We should try and strive to spend 100%. So while we're not at 100%, the good news is for 2019 and 2020, between those years, we averaged only 23%. So we're improving. We're not where we need to be, but it definitely is an improvement. The water utility, we're on page 38. You'll see that revenue is going to stay relatively flat and cost of sales relatively flat. You see that labor will go up, even on the water side. With 2020, we made some cutbacks, and we want to be at fully staffed. Plus, we have an additional crew in there. We're adding an additional crew because we want to make sure that we maintain those water connections, new meters, the water leaks and so forth, and repairing yards when we have leaks. So we're actually going to be adding an additional crew. And then on the expense side, that's going to go up. We anticipate we're going to have more hookups as in the coming year. So actually, we're going to, while compared to 2019, we're well up, we're actually down a little bit compared to the trailing 12. And here are the capital projects. And you'll see here, right in the middle here, we have a couple projects, and those are, right about here, those are the addition of the extra crew. The other call out I want to point out is in previous years we've done $300,000 in water line replacement. This year we're looking at doing $500,000 in water line replacement. The water loan, the debt service, so we're in the month of November, earlier this month, we made an added payment of $1 million. For 21, we anticipate to make an extra payment of $600,000. This will allow us to pay the water bond off in 3 to 4 years, but we're not required to do this, so we're going to be able to maintain that flexibility. If something unexpected were to occur, we can always scale it back and just make the regular payment. But very pleased that we're able to advance those payments on that. And then consistent with the 2020 budget, we're anticipating that the POA will make a payment of $280,000. And so here's their simple cash flow. You'll see that here's their EBITDA. We talked about that briefly. Here's the allocations. We mentioned that. This is the flip side of that. Here's the capital projects, the $1.4 million. Here's the debt service on the bond. And then this is actually a repayment, so this improves cash. And you see we have total cash of $171,000. You see in the previous years, in 19, because of the water loan, because of the loan from water to help us put out the fire, we actually were negative, but we're digging ourselves out. Couple interesting points of information that I wanted to share. This was in the detailed presentation, but I just wanted to pull out these slides. You can see that our rounds of golf are way up over previous years. We're definitely had a trend line going downhill here, and then all of a sudden we're up. We're up about 19%. Regionally, golf is up 12.5%, so we're actually beating the average. And so I think that part of that is COVID, and then part of that is the 2020 plan with the new fee schedule. We're just getting more people to play golf. Here's something also interesting. These are the number of improved lots that are in good standing. And good standing means they're paying. And you'll see that from 2017 to 2020, we have had an increase of 1,000. So lots of construction going on, and they're staying current. So 1,000 additional properties are paying the full assessment. But what's also interesting is since 2017 through 2020, we've also had an increase of 1,000 additional unimproved properties that are in good standing. You'd think that number would go down as they convert from unimproved to improved, but that's a credit to our accounting team and our legal team in getting people to pay their assessments. Also, Doug mentioned earlier that we were, Stacy mentioned earlier about lot sales. You can see that since 2016, we've had a steady increase. And 2019 was the banner year where we sold 250, the regular, and then we had the flash sale, which was almost 350. So last year we sold almost 600 lots. This year we're over 200. So that's everything they can get their hands on, they sell very quickly. And we have a judicial sale tomorrow, actually. And then we mentioned earlier, activity cards are up by 40%. They're actually at 42%. I did this slide about a week ago, and we've actually had a little bump since then. And so they're up by almost 4,000 activity cards over prior year. Guest passes are way up by 4,000, and boat registrations are up by 20%. So really having an outstanding year, and it really demonstrates that the 2020 plan is working and has been well received by our community. And that's it. Any questions?
So that's the short version. It's a lot more fun to do this budget than it was a year ago, I'll tell you that. First order of business, I need a motion to approve this budget.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, that's Mary and Mike.
I think it was Sandy and Mike.
No, it was me.
Okay, now,
Mike, are you seconding the motion? Yes, I second it. Thank you.
okay, so we have a motion and seconded. Now, is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we will move directly to the vote. Tia? Okay, Tia?
I always want to say something, y'all know that.
I know. I was trying not to look at you.
No, I was just going to say, with such a large budget, with how much drama we've gone through in the past couple of years, watching it from the other side, being on the board for a year, looking at the progress we've had, I think I just want to take a minute and say thank you to everyone and every department manager that puts their time into this. There are 9 board members that have to vote on this, and we all have our own different thinking of members we're representing and what we think is important, and nothing's ever going to be 100%. It's not 100% of every line item in this budget that I agree with either, but I do want to say thank you and just a great job to the team for putting it together.
Okay,
I
thank you.
second that.
Mary seconds that, so, yes, we do. We do appreciate the hard work that has been done to keep Bella Vista going and advancing our cause. Okay, if there are no further comments or discussion, we will have a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Mike, and Tia?
She said aye.
Tia said aye. Okay. All those opposed? Jerry Hover. The budget is approved. Next item is one that happens way too often. We have a Highway 340.
Oh, hold on, we got to do the walk-in memo for the fee schedule.
Okay, the fee schedule.
You could make a good argument that the fee schedule is inherently approved when you approve the 21 budget, but we felt it was a good idea to have the board vote on this separately. All of the fees that are incorporated into this fee schedule are consistent with the promises that were made with the 2020 plan.
So there are a couple, my understanding is there are a couple of very small changes for guest fees.
There's a few guest fees, and a couple of the water fees were impacted by the 1% increase in sales tax that was passed by the city.
So
Other
that's,
than that, all the other fees remained the same, no member fees changed.
right. Okay, do we have a motion to accept the fee schedule as presented?
So moved.
Jan makes the motion, Mary seconds it. Is there any discussion on the fee schedule?
Can you recap which guest changes for anybody watching? What is
For anybody watching, it's actually, the only changes we made were to the camp rentals for just the camping, and majority of those changes were as a result of the 1% sales tax change also.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the fee schedule as proposed, signify by saying aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Now we can talk about the bridge. As I'm sure you're aware, maybe you're not, the Highway 340 bridge at Town Center that goes over Little Sugar Creek is being expanded by the state to a 5-lane bridge. We have to relocate our water main, which is attached to that bridge. And what we are planning to do is to put that water line under Little Sugar Creek, so we won't have this problem again. It won't be impacted by floods or anything like that. We got the bids back, and it was not a good surprise. It, like most projects right now, came in more than we expected. And so now we need to approve a change to that contract. The change is go from $375,000 to $498,000. And it's not something that we have much choice in doing, but it will be a much better protected water main when it's relocated, and we won't ever have to do it again.
And we found that, unfortunately, construction costs have skyrocketed. We have Charlie Holt and Mike Taggart here if any board member has a question. But those costs have just skyrocketed. We've been reading articles about that, both regionally and nationally. They went out, the engineering firm that we hired got 6 bids. The one that we're presenting to the board is the low bid. So we did our due diligence to try and get that number down, but unfortunately we were not able to get it to the original approved amount. The management can act within 10% of an approved capital budget, but this is well more than 10%, so we had to bring it back to the board. Charlie, you got to keep me honest, but I think they're planning on starting this project relatively soon.
Yes, right.
Good deal.
Okay.
About the first of the year.
So, we did check, if there's any concern about the low bid. We did due diligence, and this company is very qualified and experienced in this kind of work, and we have no qualms that they will be able to complete it. So do I have a motion?
David, I make a motion to approve the change to the Water Department capital project from $375,000 to $498,000 for the Highway 340 bridge water main relocation, recognizing that we have received 6 bids for the project and we have selected the lowest bidder.
Thank you, Tia. A second?
Second.
Jerry Barron seconds. Okay, is there any further discussion on this? I will then call for a vote. All those in favor of
Rocks.
the, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mike said aye. Mary
Aye.
and Tia. Okay, it's unanimous.
Mind if I cover the next one?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. We're requesting that the board give management approval to purchase 2 pieces of property from Cooper. The first one is unfortunately our boat launch and dock on Lake Ann, the only boat launch and dock on this lake, is on Cooper property. We of course asked them to give it to us for free, but unfortunately we did not get an affirmative on that. Relocating it was considered as an option, but we approached them at the same time that we were addressing that issue. We had a parcel that is at almost the corner of Trafalgar and Lancashire. We have a water tower in that area on the east side. I'm sure everybody is aware with the tremendous amount of growth that is going on in that area of our town, our community, that we would like to acquire that additional piece of property right next to it, right north of it, for future expansion. We went out and got a bid on that piece of property. I'm sorry, an appraisal on that piece of property. Cooper was nice enough to go halvesies on that appraisal, and the appraisal on it came out at $69,500. We went to them and offered $69,500 for both parcels, and they agreed to it, with the $69,500 going towards the one parcel for the water department on Trafalgar and Lancashire, and $1 for the Lake Ann location, which would allow us to keep the boat launch in exactly where it is located. There was 3 contingencies placed on this. First of all, that we would have to receive formal board approval, hopefully tonight. Cooper would need, the second contingency is Cooper would need to put in for a lot split on the Lake Ann property. And then on the Trafalgar and Lancashire one, we would need to change it from residential zoning to commercial zoning. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. First order of business, do we have a motion to approve that purchase?
Have the 2 contingencies been met?
No, they have not been met yet. What would happen is the board what we're asking is that the board would give us authority to enter into the agreement, provided we would not be able to finalize the agreement until the 2 contingencies have been met.
So we would be approving the purchase with the contingencies. If the contingencies aren't met, we're not out anything. So first we have to approve the purchase. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion granting management the authority to acquire a parcel of land at Trafalgar and Lancashire, and a small parcel on Lake Ann from CCI with the full appraised value of $69,500 paid for the Trafalgar parcel and $1 paid for the Lake Ann parcel. The Trafalgar parcel having a contingency of needing to be rezoned from residential to commercial, and the Lake Ann parcel having a contingency to require a lot split.
And a second on that? Jan seconds
I'll
it.
second.
We have Charlie and Mike here. If
Are there any
Oh,
questions?
I'm sorry.
There are no questions. So we will move to the vote. All in favor signify by raising hands or saying aye.
Aye.
Mary says yes.
Aye.
Tia
Aye.
says yes, and Mike says yes. It is unanimous. And I want to thank CCI for working with us on this. It's something that is, I believe, important for our future, for water, for our customers, and I really do appreciate that Cooper Communities has worked with us on this. So that brings us to the end of the scheduled meeting. And I always ask, does anybody have anything else that they want to bring up? Okay, in that case, the next Directors GM meeting, a closed meeting, is on Thursday, December 3rd. That's early, again, because of Christmas. The Golf Committee, as we said earlier, is not going to meet. The Lakes Advisory Committee meeting, December 9th, 2 o'clock here in the boardroom. The Directors Work Session, Thursday the 10th, is 9 a.m. in the boardroom. That's a week earlier than it normally would be any other month. The Recreation Joint Advisory Committee meeting, Monday, December 14th, is Zoom and Facebook only. And the Board of Directors regular session, Thursday, December 17th, 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. That is, of course, 1 week earlier in the month than normal. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
And Thanksgiving, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.